Every morning, just before the sun begins to rise, she steps out of her small, modest home and begins walking. The roads are empty, the streets quiet. No one knows the miles she covers, the pain she endures, or the strength it takes just to put one foot in front of the other. But she walks, as she has for years. On this particular morning, as the city slowly wakes up, something is different. A cop, doing his usual patrol, notices her. He's used to the quiet hours before the rush of traffic fills the streets, but something about this woman catches his attention. She's walking, carrying nothing but a small, worn-out bag. Her pace is steady, unwavering, despite the early morning chill. He watches her for a moment before deciding to follow, curiosity pushing him to learn more. The woman doesn't notice the cop at first. Her mind is focused, determined. Each step feels heavier than the last, but she keeps going. It's not the first time she's walked this route. In fact, it's a route she knows all too well. The journey has become a part of her daily routine, a rhythm she's used to. But today, it's as if the cop's presence changes something. She walks past empty stores, closed shops, and quiet houses. She walks with a purpose. The cop, from a distance, sees her move with determination, but something about her tired eyes makes him wonder, why does she do this? Why does she endure this every single day? As the woman continues on, the cop gets closer, his curiosity growing. He notices the slight limp in her step, the way her back hunches just a bit as if the weight of the journey is already taking its toll. Yet she never slows down. She keeps walking. He can't help but be drawn to her, there's a strength in her movements, an unspoken resolve. He pulls over to the side of the road, keeping his distance but keeping her in sight. The woman's figure grows smaller and smaller as she continues down the long road. What could be so important that she needs to walk such a distance? Where is she going, and why does she choose this exhausting path day after day? He's seen many things in his time on the force, but this was something different. She wasn't just walking, she was surviving. He knows it. He feels it. But why? What's pushing her to do this, and why does no one seem to notice? As he watches her disappear into the distance, the cop can't help but feel a rising sense of unease. There's something about this woman's journey that feels significant, like it's leading to something far greater than just another day of work. Something more personal, more emotional, perhaps even more heart-wrenching. But what is it? The cop starts his car and begins to follow, keeping a safe distance behind. He doesn't know what he's looking for yet, but he's certain that there's more to this woman than meets the eye. And in that moment, he makes a decision that will change both their lives forever. Because today, he's not just a cop on his morning patrol. Today, he's about to uncover something far deeper than he ever expected. Something that will make him question his own life and what he takes for granted. The woman doesn't know it yet, but her long walk to work is about to be interrupted, not by an obstacle on the road, but by the presence of someone who will soon come to understand her story, a story she's been carrying for far too long. And with that, the cop's investigation begins. But little does he know, this will not be a simple case of curiosity. This is a journey of its own, one filled with unexpected twists and a truth that will leave him, and everyone who hears this story, changed forever. The cop, now driving behind her at a cautious distance, keeps his eyes locked on the woman's determined figure. The early morning haze surrounds them, and the city slowly starts to wake up. But the cop's mind is elsewhere, focused on the woman ahead of him. What could possibly be driving her to make this long, grueling walk every day? For the next few days, he continues his patrol, making sure to follow her from a distance. He notices the subtle changes in her routine, the way she walks, her body language, how every step seems to carry a burden too heavy for one person to bear. She never looks back, never acknowledges him or the world around her. It's as if she's in a race against time, but for what? There's something compelling about her, something that draws him in deeper each day. It's not just her walk, it's the quiet resilience she radiates. She doesn't seem to be in any hurry, yet she never pauses. Her pace remains constant, her eyes fixed ahead. The cop feels an overwhelming need to know her story, to understand what makes her tick. One morning, the cop decides to take a chance. Instead of simply following, he pulls over and parks his car a few feet ahead of where she walks, hoping to get a closer look. He watches her approach, and as she gets closer, he notices the faintest limp in her stride. It's almost unnoticeable, but it's there. A minor injury, perhaps, or maybe the result of years of walking this same route. He wonders if she's noticed him yet. But she doesn't break her pace. There's no sign of hesitation, no acknowledgement that she even sees him. To her, this is just another day. The cop, however, feels his curiosity growing. There's more to her than just a woman walking to work, he's sure of it now. She reaches his car and passes by without so much as a glance. The cop watches her until she's out of sight again, and then something unexpected happens. Without thinking, he turns on the engine and starts following her once more. But this time, there's a decision that feels different. He's not just following anymore, he's trying to understand. He's trying to uncover the reasons behind her actions, the story she's hiding from the world. The woman's path takes her through empty streets, over cracked sidewalks, and past neighborhoods where few people are awake. He watches as she navigates her way through all of it, unfazed, steady, and determined. There's something about her, an inner strength that he can't quite put into words. The cop pulls over again, a few blocks ahead. He watches as she gets closer, and for a moment, he sees her face. Her expression is blank, as if she's lost in thought, but there's a sadness behind her eyes that he hadn't noticed before. She looks tired, weary beyond her years. And yet, she keeps going. This woman, he realizes, isn't just surviving, she's fighting. But what is she fighting for? And why does she keep walking, mile after mile, day after day? As the days pass, the cop's curiosity turns into something more. He feels a sense of responsibility to understand her, to know why she's doing this to herself. She's not asking for help, not asking for pity, but there's something about her that makes him want to offer it anyway. One day, after several weeks of silently following her, the cop makes a decision. He's not going to just observe her anymore. It's time to speak to her. He pulls over one final time, parking his car at a local convenience store. He watches as she approaches, the same determined look in her eyes. This time, however, he doesn't wait for her to pass by. He steps out of his car and walks toward her. "Excuse me," he says, his voice soft but firm. She stops and looks up at him, startled but not afraid. There's a moment of hesitation, as if she's wondering why he's approached her. But then, something in her eyes softens, perhaps it's the exhaustion or the realization that, for once, someone is actually paying attention. "I've been following you," he admits, and she raises an eyebrow. "I've been watching you walk this route every day. I just wanted to know, why?" The question hangs in the air for a moment, and for the first time, the woman looks away. Her eyes flicker with a mixture of sadness and something else, regret, maybe, or a deep, hidden pain. She takes a deep breath, her hands tightening around the strap of her worn-out bag. The cop watches her carefully, waiting for her to respond. It's a question that's been lingering in the air between them for weeks, and now, she's finally ready to answer. The woman stands still, her shoulders slumping slightly as if the weight of the question itself is enough to bring her down. The cop watches her carefully, sensing her hesitation. There's a moment of silence, thick with unspoken words, before she finally speaks. Her voice is soft, almost a whisper, yet there's a strength in it that catches the cop off guard. "I walk because I have no other choice," she says, her eyes avoiding his gaze. "I don't have a car, and I don't have money for one. So, I walk." It's that simple. Her words are matter of fact, but the cop senses the deeper story lurking beneath them. It's the kind of response that someone gives when they've had to explain the same thing too many times, when they've grown tired of justifying their struggle. But there's more, he can tell. This isn't just about not having a car. There's a bigger reason behind her relentless walk every day. The cop takes a step closer, his tone gentler now. But why 20 miles? Every day. Why do you put yourself through that? The woman's eyes flicker, her jaw tightening as if she's holding back something painful. For a long moment, she doesn't answer. The silence between them feels heavy, filled with the weight of years of hardship, years of unshared burdens. Finally, she lets out a long, slow breath and looks up at him. "It's for my daughter," she says, the words heavy with emotion. "I have a little girl, and I promised her I would always take care of her. No matter what. Even if it means walking 20 miles just to get to work. Even if I'm exhausted, even if it hurts. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure she's safe, to make sure she has everything she needs." The cop's heart tugs at her words. There's an undeniable love in her voice, a fierce determination to provide for her child no matter the cost. He can see now that this isn't just about the walk. It's about survival, about doing whatever it takes to keep her family together and afloat in a world that's constantly trying to knock her down. She continues, her voice shaky now, "Her father, he left when she was a baby. I don't have anyone to help me. No family, no friends who can really do much. So it's just me. And I can't afford to lose this job. I can't afford to fail her." The cop feels the depth of her struggle in every word. This isn't just a woman walking to work, this is a woman fighting for her family, for the future she hopes to build for her daughter. Her journey is not just physical, it's emotional, it's personal, it's the kind of struggle that no one sees, no one understands unless they've lived it. "I don't even know how much longer I can keep doing this," she adds quietly, as if the thought of it breaks her. "Some days, I feel like I'm just running on empty. But then I look at her, and I keep going." The cop stands there, stunned into silence. He's seen his fair share of hardship in his years on the force, but this, it hits differently. He's never had to walk in someone else's shoes like this, never had to struggle like this woman. The realization hits him hard, the daily grind, the quiet sacrifices that people make for those they love, go unnoticed. They go unacknowledged. Until now. He takes a deep breath, his mind racing. "You're a strong woman," he says, his voice thick with emotion. "What you're doing, what you've been doing, it's incredible." She looks at him, her eyes softening just a little. "I don't feel strong," she admits. "I just feel tired. But I have to keep going. I have to." The cop nods, understanding now more than ever. He can see the exhaustion in her eyes, the weariness in the way she stands, but he can also see the determination. She's not giving up. Not ever. And that strength, that unwavering commitment, is what makes her remarkable. There's a long pause before the cop speaks again, his voice more serious now. "You shouldn't have to do this alone." The woman shakes her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "That's the thing, isn't it? You don't get to choose. Life doesn't give you the luxury of asking for help." The cop's heart breaks a little at her words, but he knows one thing for sure, he can't just walk away from this. He's not just a cop anymore. He's someone who needs to help, to make sure this woman doesn't have to carry this weight on her own. "Let me help you," he says, his voice firm. "You don't have to do this by yourself." She looks at him, her face a mixture of surprise and skepticism. "And how are you going to help me?" He hesitates for a moment, thinking. There's no quick fix, no easy solution, but he knows he can at least make a difference. "I don't know yet. But we'll figure it out. I'll do whatever I can to make sure you don't have to walk those 20 miles anymore. She stares at him for a moment, as if trying to read his sincerity. Then, slowly, she nods. It's a small gesture, but it feels like the first glimmer of hope she's had in a long time. The days continue, each one bringing the same endless routine. The woman wakes early, prepares her daughter for school, and then sets out on her long walk to work. The weight of the world presses on her shoulders, but she doesn't stop. She can't. Every step is a reminder of her promise to her daughter, to herself, and to the life she is desperately trying to build. The cop continues to follow her from a distance, observing her struggle with growing concern. He sees the small, unnoticed signs of wear and tear, her shoes, now barely held together by fraying laces, the ache in her legs that she refuses to acknowledge, the way she pauses briefly at street corners, hands resting on her knees as she catches her breath. There's no one to help her, no one to relieve her of the burden. It's just her, walking through the world with all the weight of her life behind her. On one particularly cold morning, as the wind bites at his face, the cop watches her walk past him. Her face is pale, drawn tight with exhaustion. Her eyes, though still determined, seem distant, as if her mind is somewhere far away. She doesn't even look up as she passes his car, her focus solely on the road ahead. It's as if she's lost the ability to look back, to look around. Her world has shrunk to that one path, that one goal. The cop pulls over and steps out of his car. His heart aches as he watches her struggle. There's a part of him that wants to run to her, to offer some kind of immediate relief. But he knows that it's not enough. He can't just fix this in a moment. This woman needs more than just a handout, she needs a chance. She needs a real opportunity to change the course of her life. So, the cop does the only thing he knows how to do, he begins making calls. He reaches out to local charities, to friends who can help with transportation, to social services. Anything, everything, that might ease the woman's burden. He's determined to find a way to break the cycle she's trapped in, to offer her more than just words of encouragement. Meanwhile, the woman trudges on, unaware of the cop's efforts to intervene. Her journey continues, just as it always has. But something in her heart has shifted. For the first time in years, she allows herself a glimmer of hope, a hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change. That evening, as she arrives home after another exhausting day, she finds a small envelope slipped under her door. Inside is a note with an address and a phone number, along with a simple message: "You don't have to do this alone. Help is here." Her heart races as she reads the words over and over. Who could have left this? Why? And what does it mean? The note is vague, but it's enough to stir something inside her, a hope that's been buried for so long, it feels foreign to even acknowledge it. She doesn't know what to do with this new possibility. For so long, she's been alone, fighting every battle on her own. But now, someone has noticed her struggle. Someone has reached out. It's not much, but it's a lifeline, one that might just be the beginning of something more. She hesitates, then pulls out her phone and dials the number written on the note. Her hands shake slightly as she waits for the call to connect. After a few rings, a voice on the other end picks up. Hello? Her heart skips a beat. It's him, the cop who's been following her, the cop who's been watching her walk those 20 miles every day. I don't know what this is, she says, her voice trembling. But I saw the note, Anne. I don't understand. Why would you help me? The cop's voice is steady, calm. I've been following you for a while now. I know how hard you've been working. And I know that you don't have to do it alone. I want to help you get out of this situation. You deserve more than walking 20 miles every day. You deserve a chance to breathe. She stays silent for a moment, taking in his words. For the first time in a long time, she allows herself to feel something other than exhaustion, relief. It's overwhelming. A part of her wants to believe it, wants to trust this stranger, but the other part of her is afraid. What if it's just another empty promise? But she can't let fear hold her back. Not now. Not when something finally feels like it could change. I don't know what to say, she finally manages. I've been doing this for so long. I don't know how to let someone else help. The cop's voice softens. You don't have to do it alone anymore. Let me show you a different way. The woman stands at the edge of her small kitchen, the phone pressed to her ear, her fingers trembling slightly as the cop's words echo in her mind. For the first time in years, the weight of her constant struggle seems just a little lighter. But as much as she wants to believe that someone might finally help her, a part of her is still hesitant. Can she truly let go of the burden she's carried for so long? Is it really possible for someone to offer her the support she needs without strings attached? I just don't know where to start, she says softly, her voice wavering. I've been doing this on my own for so long. It feels like asking for help is giving up. The cop pauses, letting her words hang in the air between them. He understands the hesitation, the fear that comes with vulnerability. He's been there himself, trying to do everything on his own, unwilling to accept help for fear of looking weak. But he also knows that strength isn't about carrying everything alone. It's about recognizing when you need support and having the courage to accept it. You're not giving up, he replies gently. You're doing what any good parent would do, you're protecting your family. But you don't have to carry that weight by yourself anymore. You've already done more than most people would in your situation. Let someone else take some of that weight for you. Her eyes sting as she listens to him. His words hit deeper than she expected. She's spent so many years pushing herself beyond her limits, convincing herself that asking for help would mean she wasn't strong enough. But now, here's a stranger, telling her it's okay to lean on someone else. That maybe, just maybe, it's okay to trust someone. I don't know how to ask for help anymore, she admits, her voice barely a whisper. I've been on my own for so long. I'm used to doing everything for myself. I don't even know where to start. The cop can hear the sorrow in her voice, the pain of years of struggle weighing heavily on her. He knows this isn't just about a ride to work or a few extra dollars. It's about everything she's been through, every sacrifice she's made for her daughter, every moment she's pushed herself past her breaking point because she didn't have anyone to turn to. I understand, he says quietly. But you don't have to keep doing this alone. Let me help you. We'll start small, with whatever you need. A ride to work, food, support, whatever it takes. She stays silent for a long time, the weight of his offer sinking in. It's not just the help he's offering, it's the compassion, the acknowledgement that her struggles are real, that she's not invisible. For so long, she's felt like she's been walking through life unnoticed, her sacrifices ignored by the world. But now, someone has seen her. Someone understands. She wipes away a tear before taking a deep breath, her voice steadier than before. I don't know how to thank you for this. I never thought anyone would care enough to help. The cop smiles softly, though she can't see it. You don't need to thank me. I'm just doing what anyone should do. And you don't need to carry this burden anymore. Let me help you carry it. The words she's been longing to hear for years hang in the air between them. She isn't alone anymore. She isn't just a woman walking miles in the dark, invisible to everyone around her. For the first time in a long while, she feels like she's seen, like someone recognizes her struggle. Okay, she finally says, her voice trembling with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Okay, I'll let you help. It's a small step, but it's a start. For the first time in what feels like forever, she allows herself to believe that things might actually get better. That there's a way out of the endless cycle of exhaustion, that someone might be able to make things just a little easier. Over the next few days, the cop arranges for a local organization to help with transportation, and he even goes as far as setting up a food delivery service for her and her daughter. It's not a fix-all, but it's something. And for the first time, she feels the weight on her shoulders start to lighten, even if just a little. But there's something deeper that the cop has yet to learn. The true depth of the woman's struggle. She's been carrying more than just the weight of her physical journey to work. Her heartache runs deeper, and as much as she's been willing to accept his help, there are parts of her story that she's yet to reveal. One day, when the cop checks in on her, she invites him inside. It's the first time she's allowed anyone into her home beyond her daughter. He steps inside, noticing the small, neat space she's made for the two of them, but there's an underlying sadness that fills the room. She sits down on the couch, her hands folded in her lap, looking smaller somehow, more fragile than she's let on. "I haven't told you everything," she says quietly. "There's more, so much more. Things that are harder to say than I thought." The cop sits down beside her, watching her carefully. "You don't have to tell me if you're not ready." She shakes her head. "I'm ready. I need someone to understand. I need you to understand." And then, with a deep breath, she begins to tell him her story. A story of loss, betrayal, and heartbreak, the real reason she walks those 20 miles every day. The woman takes a deep breath, her eyes searching the floor as she gathers the courage to speak the words she's kept buried for so long. The cop, now seated beside her on the small couch, watches her quietly, giving her the space to share what she hasn't been able to say until now. He doesn't rush her. He knows that this moment is important, that the truth she's about to reveal will change everything. I wasn't always like this," she begins, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't always have to walk 20 miles just to make a living. I didn't have to struggle every single day just to survive." The cop nods, his attention fully on her. He knows there's more beneath the surface. He's seen it in her eyes, the way she carries herself, the pain that never quite leaves. But what he doesn't know is the story behind it, the history that led her to this point. She pauses for a moment, her hands trembling as she picks at the hem of her sleeve. "I used to have a family, a life. A life that I thought would be mine forever. But things changed. My husband, he left me. He left me and our daughter when she was just a baby. He didn't even look back." The cop feels his heart twist as he listens. He had known something was wrong, but he hadn't expected this. The pain in her voice is raw, the betrayal evident in every word. It's clear that her journey, her endless walking, is a result of a heartbreak that runs much deeper than anyone could see from the outside. "He said he needed to find himself," she continues, her voice shaking now. "He said I'd be better off without him. That's what he told me." And just like that, he was gone. She looks up at him, her eyes filled with a quiet sadness. "I had to figure out how to survive. I had to be both the mother and the father. And I did it, for her. For my daughter." The cop's heart aches for her. It's one thing to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, but to carry the weight of someone's abandonment as well? That's a burden few can bear. But it wasn't just that, she adds, her voice now barely audible. "I thought I was strong. I thought I could handle it all. But then I lost my job. And there was nothing left. No money, no car, no safety net. Nothing. That's when I started walking." She wipes away a tear, but it doesn't stop the flood that follows. She's been holding this in for years, keeping it locked away because she didn't want anyone to see her weakness. But now, with the cop sitting there, listening, she lets herself feel the full weight of it. She's been walking for so long, but it's not just the physical miles that have worn her down, it's the emotional miles, the heartbreak, the exhaustion of doing it all on her own. "I walked because I didn't have a choice," she continues. Every step was for her. Every step was to make sure she had what she needed, even if it meant losing myself along the way. But I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. I'm so tired, but I can't stop. I can't give up on her. The cop sits in stunned silence, his heart heavy with empathy. He understands now. The miles she walks aren't just a physical journey, they're a representation of everything she's been through, everything she's sacrificed for her daughter. The exhaustion in her eyes isn't just from the physical strain, it's the weight of years of struggle, of loss, of doing the impossible every day with no one to help. He reaches out, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder, trying to offer a small comfort. "You're so much stronger than you know," he says softly. "You've done everything you could, and you've done it for her. That's what makes you strong." She looks at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and disbelief. She's heard words of encouragement before, but never from someone who truly understands what she's been through. This time, it feels different. It feels like he's not just saying it to make her feel better, he genuinely sees her, her struggle, her strength. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now," she says quietly. "I don't know how to stop walking. I've been doing it for so long, it feels like it's all I know." The cop gives her a reassuring smile. "You don't have to keep walking alone. Let me help you find another way. We'll figure it out, one step at a time." She nods, the faintest spark of hope beginning to flicker in her eyes. It's small, fragile, but it's there. And for the first time in what feels like forever, she feels like maybe, just maybe, things can change. As they sit in silence, the cop begins to plan, to think of the next steps. He knows that the woman's struggle isn't over, but he's determined to help her. There's still so much to be done, so much to fix, but for the first time, she doesn't have to face it alone. And as the sun begins to set outside, casting a warm glow over the small room, the cop realizes that this is what true strength looks like. It's not just about walking the miles, it's about knowing when to stop, when to ask for help, and when to lean on others. And perhaps, for the first time in years, this woman is ready to take that step. The days that followed were unlike any the woman had experienced in years. It was as though a fog had begun to lift from her mind, and with each passing day, she allowed herself to believe that change was possible. The cop's continued presence and support gave her the strength to make decisions she had long put off, decisions that she had once thought were out of reach. It started with small steps. The woman, for the first time in a long time, let someone else help her. She allowed herself to accept a ride to work instead of walking the 20 miles. It wasn't easy, she felt a mixture of guilt and relief, but as the days passed, she began to feel the weight of the world slowly lighten. The exhaustion that had plagued her every day, both physical and emotional, began to fade, if only just a little. One morning, as the cop picked her up for the ride to work, she noticed the change in herself. She no longer felt like she was trudging through life with her head down, lost in an endless cycle of survival. For the first time in a long time, she actually felt seen. She felt valued, like her story mattered, like her struggle was not in vain. She didn't have to walk alone anymore. During the ride, she found herself speaking to the cop more openly. Her words weren't just about her daily struggles anymore, they began to reflect her hopes and dreams, things she hadn't allowed herself to think about in years. She talked about her daughter, how much she wanted to give her a better future, and how, for so long, she had put everything aside just to make sure her daughter had what she needed. "I never let myself think about what I want," she admitted one morning as they drove along a quiet street. "It was always just about her, and surviving. But now, I think maybe it's time for me to think about me too. To figure out what I need, what I want." The cop nodded, offering her a small smile. "You deserve to think about yourself too. You've been putting others first for so long. It's your turn now." Those words stuck with her long after they parted ways that morning. For so long, she had believed that her needs didn't matter, that the only thing that was important was making sure her daughter had a better life. But now, a shift was happening inside her. She was beginning to recognize that she couldn't pour from an empty cup. To give her daughter the future she wanted, she needed to heal, to find her own peace. It wasn't an easy process. There were still days when the weight of her past threatened to pull her back into the shadows of self-doubt. But she began to take small steps toward reclaiming her own life. She started by signing up for a job training program, a chance to better herself and find more stable work. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future beyond the daily grind, beyond the endless walk to survive. But change, she soon learned, didn't come without its challenges. She encountered setbacks, like the overwhelming fear of failure and the guilt that came with trying to build something new for herself while still being the pillar for her daughter. There were days when she doubted whether she was doing the right thing. Was it selfish to take time for herself when her daughter still needed her? Was it right to focus on her own dreams when there were still so many responsibilities on her shoulders? It was on one of those difficult days, as she sat in a quiet park after work, lost in thought, that the cop found her again. He had noticed the uncertainty in her eyes over the past few days, and he knew she was struggling. She looked up as he approached, offering him a small, tired smile. "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing," she confessed, her voice heavy with doubt. "Every step feels so hard, like I'm walking down a path that's too steep, too uncertain." The cop sat beside her, giving her space but staying close enough to offer comfort. "It's okay to feel uncertain," he said softly. "Change is hard. It's a new journey, and it's normal to have doubts. But you're doing it. You're trying, and that's more than most people ever do. It's a step forward." She sighed, her eyes tired but grateful. "I just want to get it right for her. I don't want to mess it up. I want her to have a better life." The cop nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "She's already lucky to have you. You're giving her something invaluable, the gift of resilience, the gift of seeing her mother stand up and keep going. That's a lesson she'll carry with her for the rest of her life." For the first time in a long time, the woman let herself feel a flicker of hope. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was living. She was growing, learning, and building the life she had once thought was impossible. The next few weeks were filled with moments of doubt, but also moments of progress. The woman continued with the job training program, slowly gaining confidence in her abilities. She spent time with her daughter, helping her with schoolwork and making time for the things that brought them joy. Slowly but surely, she was learning how to balance her own needs with those of her family. And through it all, the cop continued to be there, supporting her, encouraging her, and reminding her that she didn't have to do it alone. He wasn't just offering her help, he was showing her that she had value, that her dreams mattered just as much as the ones she had for her daughter. One afternoon, as the woman was walking to her car after another long day of work and training, she felt a surge of gratitude for everything that had changed. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. She was finally on the path to something better. And she knew, deep in her heart, that she wouldn't have made it this far without the help of the people who had supported her along the way. With a deep breath, she glanced up at the sky, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she was ready to face it. As the days passed, the woman and the cop began to form an unexpected connection. Their bond wasn't born out of grand gestures or sweeping promises. It was something quieter, built on trust and understanding, two things that the woman had once thought impossible to give. But now, with every conversation, every ride to work, she felt the weight of her struggles a little less. The cop, too, began to look at life through a different lens. He had always been a man of duty, focused on his job, his responsibilities, and the rules that governed his life. But meeting this woman, witnessing her courage and resilience, had changed something inside him. He found himself thinking more about his own choices, his own relationships, and the things he had taken for granted. There were mornings when the woman would talk to him about her hopes for the future, about her dreams for her daughter, about the possibility of going back to school, of finding a job that allowed her to not just survive but thrive. The cop listened carefully, offering words of encouragement, but he also gave her space to voice her doubts, her fears, and her worries. "I'm not sure if I'm cut out for this," she admitted one day as they drove to her job. "I'm scared I'm just going to fail. That I'm going to disappoint everyone." The cop glanced over at her, his eyes kind but firm. "You're already doing better than you think. Every step you've taken so far has been a step towards something better. And it's not about being perfect, it's about showing up. You've already done that. You're already succeeding." She smiled, though it was small, a flicker of hope beginning to form. "I still have a long way to go, though. There's so much I don't know. So much I'm still afraid of." "That's okay," he replied, his tone gentle. "The important thing is that you're trying. You've got this. One step at a time." And with those simple words, a weight lifted from her chest. He wasn't just offering her advice, he was reminding her that it was okay to feel uncertain, to not have all the answers, as long as she kept moving forward. She wasn't alone on this journey anymore. Over time, their conversations became more personal. The cop opened up about his own life, about the things he had struggled with over the years, his own doubts, his own fears. He spoke about the pressure of his job, the loneliness that sometimes came with it, and how, over the years, he had distanced himself from others in an attempt to remain strong and unaffected. But meeting her had shifted something in him. Her strength had made him reevaluate his own approach to life, and he found himself realizing how important it was to connect with people, to share struggles and burdens. He'd spent so many years keeping everything bottled up, but now, for the first time, he was opening up, not just to her, but to himself. One evening, as they sat in the car after another long day, the woman turned to him. "Thank you," she said, her voice quiet but full of sincerity. "Thank you for seeing me. For not just seeing a woman walking down the street, but seeing me, seeing what I've been through. It's more than I ever thought I deserved." The cop looked at her, his heart full of emotion. "You deserve so much more than you think. And you don't have to carry it all by yourself anymore. That's what people are here for, to help, to support, to lift each other up." She nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. For the first time, she felt like she could breathe. She wasn't a burden, and she wasn't invisible. She was worthy of help, of kindness, of the future she was beginning to build. It was moments like these that reminded her of why she had kept going. Not just for her daughter, but for herself. She had spent so many years convinced that she was alone in this world, that she had to keep walking without any support, without any hope. But now, with the cop's friendship, with the help of the community that had begun to surround her, she saw a new possibility, a future where she wasn't just surviving, but living. And the cop, too, began to see things differently. He realized that his role in her life wasn't just about providing help, it was about being part of something bigger than himself. It was about recognizing the humanity in each person he met, about understanding that everyone carries their own story, their own struggles, and sometimes, all it takes is someone to listen, to offer a hand, to help carry the load. Their bond continued to grow, not out of duty, but out of mutual respect and admiration. And as the woman continued her journey, toward a new job, toward a better life for her daughter, and toward her own healing, the cop remained by her side, offering support, encouragement, and a reminder that no one has to face the hardest parts of life alone. The months passed, each one a testament to the woman's perseverance and the support she had finally allowed herself to accept. With the cop's encouragement and the help of a community that rallied behind her, she was slowly rebuilding her life. She no longer had to walk 20 miles to work each day, and with each passing day, she was finding new ways to give her daughter a future full of hope and possibility. She had completed the job training program she'd signed up for, and although she still faced challenges, she was no longer overwhelmed by them. She found herself working a stable job that, while not perfect, allowed her to provide for her daughter in ways she hadn't imagined before. They moved into a small apartment, cozy but enough for the two of them, and it felt like a fresh start. One evening, as they sat together in the new apartment, she watched her daughter play with her toys, her laughter filling the room. For the first time in years, she felt a peace she hadn't thought was possible. Her daughter, with her bright smile and her playful innocence, was growing up in an environment where she would be able to dream big and know that nothing was impossible. It was in that moment that the woman realized the true gift she had been given, not just in the help she had received from the cop, but in the understanding that no one could do it all alone. Strength wasn't just about carrying the weight on your own, it was about knowing when to lean on others, when to accept help, and when to open yourself up to connection. Her journey had been long, full of heartache and sacrifice, but it had also been filled with moments of unexpected kindness, like the cop who had seen her, who had believed in her when she hadn't believed in herself. And in return, she had learned to trust again, to allow herself to be vulnerable, and to accept that asking for help wasn't a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. The cop had taught her that people, true people, don't just see the surface. They see the struggle, the heartache, the quiet resilience. And when they do, they offer their support, their help, and their friendship. It was a lesson that had changed her life forever. As she sat on the couch, her daughter nestled beside her, she thought about the long, lonely walks she used to make. The exhaustion that had consumed her body, the fear that had gripped her heart. But now, as she looked at her daughter and her new life, she understood something deeper. She had walked those 20 miles every day not just for survival, but for hope, for the hope that one day, she would be able to offer her daughter a life where she didn't have to walk in the same lonely steps her mother had. And now, with her daughter in her arms, she knew she had accomplished that. She had created a better future. The cop, though no longer just a stranger in her life, had shown her that sometimes the greatest strength doesn't come from never falling. It comes from finding the courage to rise again and accept help when you need it most. He had helped her rediscover that, and for that, she would forever be grateful. "I couldn't have done this without you," she whispered to herself one night, the words more of a promise to herself than anything else. "But I know now that I don't have to." As the woman watched her daughter's peaceful sleep, she smiled, a real, genuine smile. The journey wasn't over, but she had made it through the hardest part. She was no longer just surviving. She was living, and for the first time in years, she could finally breathe. The lesson she had learned was simple, yet profound: life doesn't require us to do everything alone. Sometimes, the strongest thing we can do is let others in, allow them to carry us when we are too weary to walk, and let them help us build the future we've always dreamed of. And as she looked out the window, watching the sun set on a new day, she knew that her life, her story, was far from finished. She had made it through the darkness, and now, with the help of others, she was ready to step into the light.